The rain was soft at first, just mist clinging to the air like breath unspoken, but now it lashed the zinc rooftops and flooded the street like it meant to drown the world. Beneath a crooked umbrella, patched with a blue tarpaulin, a man stood behind a steel chai cart. The paint had long peeled off, the burners hissed from under rusted grates, a plastic bucket of washed cups sat inverted beside a milk tin, and he was still, not just with his body, but with his soul. His name was Altaf, though nobody ever asked. He moved with the weary precision of someone who had done this so long, his body no longer needed permission. A kettle boiled over. A cracked cup trembled as his hands poured chai with slight tremors. The tea spilled. He did not flinch. "Too watery," a customer muttered. "Next time get proper sugar," said another, flipping a wet bill onto the counter and walking away. A third drank halfway, left without paying. Altaf didn't stop them, didn't shout, didn't bargain. His eyes weren't on the coins or the customers. They were fixed on a single photo taped beside the kettle. A small, fading snapshot of a young boy in a school uniform, smiling wide, teeth missing, his collar crooked with pride. The edges of the photo curled from steam and years of clinging, but the tape held. Altaf said nothing. He hadn't said much in months, only the hiss of milk, the clang of ladles, the groan of benches dragging through puddles, filled the silence where his words used to live. Behind him, a kettle whistled again, but he didn't move. Rain dripped from the tarpaulin onto his shoulder. His shirt absorbed it without protest. He just stood there, watching the photo, as if the boy might step out of it, as if time could be reversed with enough patience. Why is this man so still, so tired? Who is the boy in the photo? The morning broke with no ceremony. Just the same pale grey light bleeding over broken buildings and cracked sidewalks. Kareem was already at the stall, sleeves rolled, kettle steaming, wrists aching from years of lifting, pouring, waiting. He was 52, a widower, a tea vendor for 30 years. In another life he might have been a teacher. He had the voice for it, gentle but firm. Now he taught Chai how to speak comfort into cold hands. His back stooped a little more each year, but his manners never faltered. Every customer was met with the same phrase, no matter their face or fortune. "Beta, Zara Rukjau, that guy ho." "Son, wait a second, you look tired?" And he meant it, every time. The tea wasn't special by recipe, just black leaves, milk, sugar, but it was famous on this stretch of the city. Not because it was strong, but because it was kind. He added extra cardamom if someone looked heartbroken, more sugar if they were shivering. For orphans and rickshaw drivers who couldn't pay, he waved them off with a smile. "No worry, come again," he'd say, pressing the warm cup into their palms like it was medicine. But behind the quiet ritual, his world thinned. The rent was overdue again. A pink slip fluttered in his shirt pocket, the landlord's latest warning. His son, Bilal, had been sent home twice this month for unpaid school fees. They hadn't had electricity in 2 days. Kareem had sold his late wife's wedding bangles last year. Her photo still sat above the stall, next to Bilal's school portrait. Some nights he stared at both, wondering if dignity could feed a child, wondering if love poured into cups could pay the bills. Still, he never let anyone walk away empty-handed. A woman with swollen eyes got a free refill. A young boy with no shoes was given half a packet of biscuits from under the counter. Even the man who once stole from his tip jar found a warm cup waiting the next week. Kindness wasn't strategy, it was muscle memory. Kareem's hands shook now only when they were still, but in motion, in pouring, in serving and giving. He found the rhythm that kept him standing, even as everything else was falling apart. The rain had paused for once, leaving the street glistening like memory. Kareem sat on a low wooden stool behind the stall, scrubbing the steel pot with coarse sand. His hands, cracked, browned, calloused, moved in circles, thoughtless, familiar. But these hands had once been different. Years ago, in a cramped classroom lined with blueprints and chalkboards, Kareem had been a top student in mechanical engineering, the kind of boy who saw engines like puzzles, who sketched turbine models in the margins of his notebooks, who whispered theories to himself while walking home barefoot through alleyways. He had dreams, with wiring and fuel lines, not teacups and condensation. Then came her cough. A soft sound at first, like nothing, then persistent, then terrifying. Tuberculosis took longer to kill the body than it did the future. Kareem dropped out in his final year, worked at a factory by day, swept a restaurant at night, carried construction bricks on weekends. She died 2 winters later. He built this stall from leftover bricks from that same construction site, each one lifted with grief, set down with purpose. He named it quietly in her memory, though there was no signboard. Just a painted corner and the echo of what might have been. His dream had never been to sell tea, but in this stall he taught Bilal math with sugar cubes, how 3 and 2 make 5, how fractions work when you split a biscuit. He drew square roots with spilled milk on the counter, taught gravity by tipping empty cups. Once, he even turned a broken kettle into a mini steam project. In a rusted tin box beneath the bench, old journal pages still flutter, ink faded but legible, formulas, machine sketches, a turbine that runs on heat loss, a crude blueprint for a bicycle-powered generator. He hadn't looked at them in months, but he never threw them away. They lived folded under the day's earnings, under the biscuits and coins, like a secret no one asked about. His dream hadn't died. It had just been stored, like tea leaves waiting for hot water. The afternoon sun pushed through the smog, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. Kareem was pouring tea into lined-up cups when he noticed the figure, a man standing just beyond the stall's edge, quiet as an afterthought. He looked like a traveller. Dust on his shoes, collared shirt, sun-faded and wrinkled, skin browned from long days outdoors. He didn't speak, didn't order, just watched, eyes taking in everything, the kettle, the photo taped by it, Kareem's slow practiced movements. After a while, he placed a crisp note on the counter, far more than the cost of a cup, and left without a word. The next day he came again, still silent, though this time he nodded in greeting, sat on the corner bench, hands in his lap, and waited while Kareem served others. When Kareem finally placed a cup before him, the man simply watched the steam rise, sipped once, then left. This continued all week. He never finished his tea, but he listened to Kareem's small stories about the monsoon floods of '98, about the day Bilal took his first steps beside the kettle, about how cardamom must be crushed just right to soften the bitterness. The stranger said little, just sat and watched. One day he finally spoke. "Why do you give free tea to strangers?" Kareem chuckled softly, his eyes creasing in the corners. "Because someday someone gave it to me, that was all. But word travels fast in small places. The rickshaw drivers started whispering, 'He's not from around here.' Something about his face. I've seen him somewhere. Maybe he's police or a journalist. No, he's too clean, too quiet." Even Kareem's childhood friend Rafiq leaned over the counter one evening and said, "Pai, be careful." No one sits in the rain like that unless they're looking for something. But Kareem only smiled, wiping down the kettle. "Maybe he is," he said. "Maybe he's just tired." He wasn't suspicious. He didn't need to be, because there was something in the stranger's silence that felt familiar, like an old scar you'd forgotten until it ached again. Kareem didn't press him. Some people carry stories they aren't ready to tell. That night, under the dim flicker of a tube light, Kareem sat cross-legged on the floor of their one-room home, the cracked walls peeling like dried skin. A school envelope lay open in his lap. Inside, a notice, formal, cold. Final expulsion due to non-payment. No signature, just a date and the end of a dream. Bilal sat nearby, still wearing his uniform shirt, tracing letters in a torn notebook. He looked up when he saw his father's face, pale in the low light. Abba, kia hua? Kareem folded the paper neatly, almost gently, and slipped it under the mattress. Don't worry, beta, he said with a quiet smile. We'll manage. That was the beginning of the unravelling. Kareem began skipping dinner, claiming he wasn't hungry. He poured half his own morning tea into a second cup and handed it to Bilal. The boy didn't question it. He had learned not to. At the stall, Kareem started using thinner milk, fewer leaves. He served smaller cups to paying customers and full ones to the poor. He told himself it was strategy, but it was a sacrifice. His ribs began to show, the colour faded from his face, his cough returned, and his hands, they trembled now even while pouring. Still, every morning he opened the stall, still called every tired worker beta, still crushed cardamom just right, still served tea without counting coins. The rain returned one morning, and he stood in it like always, shoulders wet, fingers numb. No one noticed, not the landlord, not the customers, not the drivers who asked for refills without paying. Only one man did, the stranger, the quiet one. He sat in his usual spot, tea untouched, eyes not on the cup but on Kareem's hands. How they shook now, just a little more each day. How Kareem leaned against the counter when he thought no one was looking. No signature, just a date and the end of a dream. Bilal sat nearby, still wearing his uniform shirt, tracing letters in a torn notebook. He looked up when he saw his father's face, pale in the low light. Abba, kia hua? Kareem folded the paper neatly, almost gently, and slipped it under the mattress. Don't worry, beta, he said with a quiet smile. We'll manage. That was the beginning of the unravelling. Kareem began skipping dinner, claiming he wasn't hungry. He poured half his own morning tea into a second cup and handed it to Bilal. The boy didn't question it. He had learned not to. At the stall, Kareem started using thinner milk, fewer leaves. He served smaller cups to paying customers and full ones to the poor. He told himself it was strategy, but it was a sacrifice. His ribs began to show, the colour faded from his face, his cough returned, and his hands, they trembled now even while pouring. Still, every morning he opened the stall, still called every tired worker beta, still crushed cardamom just right, still served tea without counting coins. The rain returned one morning, and he stood in it like always, shoulders wet, fingers numb. No one noticed, not the landlord, not the customers, not the drivers who asked for refills without paying. Only one man did, the stranger, the quiet one. He sat in his usual spot, tea untouched, eyes not on the cup but on Kareem's hands. How they shook now, just a little more each day. How Kareem leaned against the counter when he thought no one was looking. The boy nodded, not fully understanding but trusting. He leaned against his father's arm. Kareem closed his eyes. Outside, the city roared with voices trying to define him, but inside he was still the man who once taught division with biscuits and gravity with tilted cups, and that had to be enough. A month passed like a season exhaling. The headlines faded, the crowd moved on, and Kareem remained quiet until one morning an envelope arrived by courier. Heavy paper, embossed logo. Inside a letter written in careful personal script. Ibrahim Zaka was inviting him to inaugurate a new school, the Kareem Foundation School for Compassion and Science. Kareem stared at the name for a long time. It didn't feel real, but Bilal, standing beside him, was beaming in a way Kareem hadn't seen in years. At the event, he wore his cleanest kurta. No cameras this time, just children, chalkboards, sunlight, and Ibrahim waiting with folded hands. I wanted to name it after the man who taught me, Ibrahim said, voice steady, not with lectures, but with tea. Kareem refused the check. Wouldn't take the keys to the house offered either. Zindagi ka maza dene mein hai, lene mein nahi, he said with a smile. Life tastes better when you're the one giving. But he asked for one thing. My son's education, no expiry date. Ibrahim nodded. Full scholarship all the way. And then, almost sheepishly, Kareem added, one more thing, a tea corner. Inside the school, but free, no bill, call it free chai for the tired. It was built the same week, a simple counter near the entrance. A sign with Kareem's handwriting, Beta zara ruk jao, dak gaye ho. The new stall opened shortly after, not far from the old alley, but this one stood beside a quiet park. The wood was polished, the shade was permanent. Birds sang where horns used to blare. Still no signboard, still the same kettle, the same cracked photo of Bilal. Now in a new school uniform, collar straighter, eyes brighter. Kareem served with the same rhythm, same warmth. But his hands trembled a little less now. His shoulders rested easier. The weight hadn't vanished, but it no longer buried him. He still gave tea to strangers, still remembered every name. But now, for the first time in decades, he allowed the world to give something back. Not riches, not praise, just space, just peace. And that, for a man like Kareem, was more than enough. The sun was low when the black car pulled up near the park. No media vans, no bodyguards, no noise. Just a familiar figure stepping out in rolled-up sleeves and quiet shoes, carrying 2 cups of tea. Not from a cafe, but from Kareem's own stall. Kareem looked up from the counter, eyebrows lifting in amusement. No cameras today? He asked, half smiling. Not today, Ibrahim replied, handing him one of the cups. Just a visit. They sat on the bench nearby, under the old neem tree whose leaves danced gently in the breeze. A boy in school uniform ran past, Bilal laughing with a classmate. Kareem watched him go, then took a sip. I've been thinking, Ibrahim began. We're starting something new at the foundation. Programs to teach empathy in our leadership tracks, grassroots perspectives, real stories. Kareem raised an eyebrow, already sensing where this was going. We want you. As a consultant, Kareem chuckled, shaking his head. Beta, I don't know anything about tech. I've never been in an office. Don't even use email. Ibrahim smiled. You know people. You've served humanity 1 cup at a time. There's more wisdom in that than in any boardroom. Kareem looked down at his tea, let the steam rise into the space between them. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It felt earned. Then he nodded slowly, his voice soft. Let me keep giving tea. Let me stay where I belong. Ibrahim's smile faded just slightly, but not from disappointment. Kareem turned to him and added, But if you ever need advice on how to treat the poor, I'll charge you 1 cup per truth. They both laughed, not the polite laughter of a staged photo, but something smaller, warmer, like the first spoon of sugar melting in hot milk. Ibrahim raised his cup. Deal. Kareem raised his too. Deal. And as the sun dipped behind the trees, their shadows stretched side by side across the pavement, the billionaire who lost himself in power, and the tea vendor who found him again 1 cup at a time. The morning was quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't beg for attention, only offers stillness. Dew clung to the grass beside the park. Sparrows fluttered low over the benches. The new tea stall stood calm, smoke curling from the kettle, like breath from a soul at ease. Kareem moved with practiced grace. No rush, no strain, just presence. He poured tea into a chipped cup and handed it to a boy. maybe 12, wearing an oversized sweater and worry in his eyes. The boy reached into his pocket, but Kareem gently stopped him with a shake of the head. "Not today, Beta," he said, smiling softly. "You look tired." The boy's shoulders dropped with quiet relief. He took the cup like a lifeline and sat under the tree to drink. Behind the stall, on a patch of shaded ground, Bilal sat cross-legged, a chessboard between him and two younger children in fresh uniforms. Their laughter echoed lightly through the morning air. The free chai for the tired sign swayed in the breeze above them. Its handwritten letters faded but clear. Kareem watched for a moment, just watched, before turning back to his bench. He reached into the rusted tin box beneath the counter and pulled out the old journal. Its pages had yellowed, edges frayed, but the spine held strong. He opened to a blank page. The ink of his pen moved slowly but surely. Kindness given without calculation is always returned, multiplied. He paused, reread it, then closed the book. The kettle hissed gently behind him, but this time it didn't feel like work. It felt like rhythm, like prayer, like a man who had nothing left to chase, only something left to give. The camera pulls back slowly. Kareem, seated in the golden morning light, the boy sipping tea in silence, Bilal teaching a quiet checkmate, and the wind, soft, constant, carrying the scent of cardamom into a world still learning how to slow down. Fade to light, fade to stillness, fade to peace.